listening to Xposed Living, Be Ageless, the podcast where we drop the masks, flip the script, and talk real life, real love, and real leadership unfiltered. I'm Stacey Vanthuyne, coach, speaker, entrepreneur, and founder of the Xposed Living movement that's redefining what it means to live, lead, and grow at any age. We talk identity, reinvention, belief, and freedom from the bedroom to the boardroom. Yes, we go there. This is not about staying young. This is about waking up. So if you're done with the shoulds and craving more fun, more freedom, more truth, more you, then grab your favorite drink, your bestie, maybe your journal. It's time. Let's get exposed. Welcome back to Xposed Living. Today's conversation is a perfect way to close out 2025. My guest is someone who's known for being polished, powerful, and deeply intentional. But what I'm most excited about today isn't his resume. It's a story of his own becoming. Rich Bracken, my friend, is a keynote speaker, an executive coach, and a brand ambassador for Talent Smart EQ. I get that right?
Yep.
But before the stages, the science, and the success, there was a man who lost over 110 pounds. He rebuilt his identity. He learned how to play the long game, and he stayed committed long after the motivation wore off. He's also a former touring DJ. We do have to find out a little bit about this Avicii thing after.
Yep.
A dad of two boys, a man who's moved cities, reset his life more than one time, and someone who deeply understands momentum, not just with hype, but as a lifestyle. This isn't a performance today. This is a conversation, Gen X to Gen X, about discipline, identity, movement, mindset, and what it actually takes to sustain success without burning out. Rich, welcome to Xposed Living. So glad we got to do this today.
It's so good to see you, and thank you for having me on the show today. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
You and me both. Every time that we get together, it's one of my favorite chats. You and I met a few years ago now on COVID time online, and just asking you, saying, next time you're back in Alberta, let me know, because I'm coming to visit.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
I need to make more trips north of the border. This next year is going to be the year for more Canadian trips. Okay, when it gets warmer.
You can't be selective like that. I mean, and he's in Kansas City, so it's not like it's super hot. So I mean, we're moving you.
Right.
We'll get you used to it.
Yeah, I've lived north, so I understand how cold it gets, and I as much as I would love to think that my skin has gotten thicker, it hasn't. So I will either time it right, or I will properly bundle up in the process. So we'll figure it out one way or the other.
All right, works for me. Hey, Rich, I want to start with most people. Over the last couple of years, you've really blown up your speaking career and been present in that type of world. And people know you from the version of you on the stage. Confident, high energy, composed. But I want to go back before that. What was really going on in your life when you were carrying that extra 110 pounds, emotionally, physically, mentally, identity-wise?
Yeah, so I'll go back a little bit further than that, where in elementary school, because I used to be the rail thin kid that played sports year round, and then one year, I think it was third grade or fourth grade, my doctor told my parents that I had exercise-induced asthma. And so being their only child, they were like, okay, no more sports outdoors, you get to sit inside. And of course, this was way before, when we didn't care about nutritional labels and we didn't know what was in our food. And they just shoved every, whatever, junk food, and we didn't have a ton of money. So it was whatever was most cost efficient and also what was the quickest. And so I went from this active kid to a sedentary kid eating junk food all the time, and, portion control and no oversight over it at all. So I became, the bigger kid in my class. It was, I think at one point I was the biggest kid in my class. And which was tough to deal with in, middle school, or, the 6th through 8th grade years are the worst anyway. Like my son is going through that right now, and he's a good looking skinny kid. He's fit. He's a great football player. And even for him, it's challenging. So imagine being a very heavy set child going through that as well. I was bullied quite a bit, teased quite a bit. But then one day I had a friend of mine who wanted me to start playing on their football team. And so I tied my size to my identity as a football player. And so I was meant to be big. I was an offensive lineman, so I protected my friends that were quarterbacks, and I provided openings for my friends that were running backs. That was my job, that was my identity. And so I had to be bigger. And so I continued to get, work out and lift heavy and eat. And I got up to, I think it was 235 pounds my senior year of high school. Went on to play college football, got up to about 250. And then when I quit playing football my sophomore year, because I tried to transfer and play at a bigger college and figured out that I wasn't that fast. So I gave up football, but didn't give up the eating and didn't give up the working out the way I knew how to. Now, I gave up all cardio because I hated cardio. And so I went from 250 to about 260 and was just miserable, out of shape. And so I carried a lot of that insecurity with me, and it got re-exposed when I didn't have the identity tied to my size. And so that was a big time struggle. I was always, I will say the one part of my personality that has always been there that also comes out now on stage is that I've always been an entertainer. I've always been an empath. I always love making people's day brighter. So if it's me performing or talking or listening or whatever it is, that's always been a fabric of who I am. That's never changed. But I had to not only shed the weight, but shed the insecurity with it. And I will say too, that I still have a couple of pictures on my phone of me when I was in the best shape that I'd ever been in. And I remember looking at those pictures going, oh, you look terrible, because I had body dysmorphia. And so I had to battle that as well. So it was overcoming the psychological and the emotional pieces of it, but then working through this body dysmorphia that was plaguing my vision. What I saw was not, it was not what was reality. And so now that I look back at these things, I'm like, how did I ever think? I mean, I was ripped. I mean, like it literally, like if you gave someone some modeling clay and said, build the perfect male upper body, like that's what I had. I was in great shape, but I literally beat myself up every single day because of what I went through. So I think the emotional tax that the insecurity took, the bullying and everything else, was something that I had to work through along with the weight loss.
It's so interesting, right? Because I think that so many of us think when we're getting older and we don't maybe think about it as much, how it still impacts our decisions and how we show up in different ways, but we never really tie it back to those things, because we just kind of like, I would say, I think as Gen X, we're always just taught to like move on, never really identify why we do what we do or why we think what we think. And so, you kind of talk through working through this new sense of identity. If somebody was in that position, like what did you actually tangibly do to get there? Like,
so I will say that I am a very, very big vocal advocate for counseling. I think everybody should go to counseling in some way, shape, or form at least 3 to 4 times just to talk about stuff. I will say that I've been through several rounds of counseling over the years, and it's been the most transformative thing. And what it does, or what it did for me, was that it gave me a caring yet objective individual to repeat back what I was saying out loud. Because most times, and by no fault of anybody's, our friends and family tend to like, oh no, you're fine, everything's fine, and they don't have that critical piece of feedback, or they don't look at things or give you feedback in an objective way because they care about you. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to drive you further into the ground. But what he did a beautiful job of was saying, what I'm hearing you say is this. And here are some things. And he would connect all the dots. And then I can't tell you how many times I would sit in his office and go, oh, because he just helped me draw the lines of what was true and what was me conjuring up these thoughts and images and beliefs in my head that weren't reality. So the deep work of counseling was everything. I will say that I was never really much of a journaler, but I was, I used my podcast really as my journal. So even, as recently as a few years ago when I started my podcast, I'd share a lot of things that I was realizing in real time. And what I loved about it was that it was me letting people in on me and letting people get to know me. But I would get messages galore of somebody saying, people saying, I needed to hear this, or I felt the same way, or I've been battling the same thing. Thank you so much for speaking this into reality and helping me understand that I can choose a better path. So that was kind of counseling by default. But it was a lot of deep work, a lot of personal. And I love what you said about Gen X. Like we're just told to like rub some dirt on it. You'll be fine. Like move on. It's fine. You know, who gives a damn about your feelings? Everybody's frustrated. Everybody sucks. Like move on. And I can't tell you how many times I would early in the morning, middle of the day, late at night, like just sit with my thoughts. Like what's going on? How am I feeling? What am I thinking of the most? What is taking up my energy? And how can I be the best version of myself, or at least my favorite version of myself?
You know, a couple things hit my mind when you were talking about. One is that how like our stories that we tell us are so not true. I think it was Dr. Joe said something to the effect of like 50% of what we tell ourselves isn't even true. Mm-hmm. And you start to think of like, you don't get the same cortisol rushes from telling a story. So you have more boldness, more brightness. And then before you know it, 10, 15, 20 years have gone by. And here's this story that we're still telling ourselves, or this identity that we're living by, that like the story to even create it isn't even the story that happened.
Right. Right. And it is crazy.
And the second part that I think was important, I want you to like lean into this with me is, you know, you're telling these stories and these were in your 40s. And I think there's so many people, especially Gen X, that I think, well, once we become a certain age, that's just who I am. Mm-hmm. It's just who I am. I can't change it. And so this deep internal work, consciously people know about it, but mm-hmm. like nobody wants to do it. It's that instant gratification kind of thing. And I think whether it was you losing your weight, redoing your identity, it's about, and I kind of mentioned even in the intro with you, is falling in love with that long game.
Mm-hmm. So it's a great question, and I'm happy to lean into it because I think there's a lot to be shared there. One, you're right, and I think it's Gen X specifically, but I also think other generations and other individuals struggle with the idea of turning the mirror on themselves quite a bit. You know, especially nowadays in the social media era, we want to be perfect. We want to be as polished as possible. We want to be as optimized. We want to be as liked. We want to be as impactful. We want to, you know, have all the big shiny moments on social media so people will fall in love with our brand. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked with that will either share their own story of struggling behind the scenes, or I'll share mine where I'm like, you know, I'm not, yeah, when I show up on social media, I'm as real as I could possibly be. Do I share my deepest, darkest struggles? Not really, but I'm not opposed to it. But I think this idea that we should all turn the mirror and turn the lens on ourselves and examine what's going on is critical to happiness and success. Well, I would say not even happiness, but joy. I've been in this conversation of joy versus happiness this last week, and it's really front of mind that we should be pursuing more joy than happiness, because happiness is that dopamine hit of a moment, but joy is that consistent foundation of self identification and happiness and pleasure that we can be consistent even in the dark times. And so I think one, it's the idea that and I always say this and I laugh because I'm like, I shouldn't have to say this out loud, but I'm going to say it. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is perfect. We're all flawed. In the minute, and I love the idea of like falling in love with your story and falling in love with who you are for the good and the bad. And say like, look, you know, there are certain aspects of me that I love. There are certain aspects of me that I have over time said, well, this is kind of just who I am. But anybody who says that, I challenge on this. Is that if you just say, well, this is who I am, I'm short-tempered, or I don't stick to goals, or I do this, this is kind of just who I am. Is that who you want to be? Because I will say this, there are lots of things that I could default to based on my family history, based on my genetics, based on anything. I've chosen not to, because I don't want that to be my story. I don't want that to be my brand. I don't want that to be who people know me as. And so I've chosen something different. And so anybody who falls back into the, well, you know, I'm just a drinker by nature, or I'm just, you know, this is just kind of the way I was raised. Frankly, I don't know if I can curse in here, but I'm going to go through it. I don't give a damn. I don't give a shit. Like what you think happened is just the story of the previous. What you want to be and what you want to do with your life moving forward is 100% up to you. And if you decide you want to break a cycle, break a cycle. If you decide you want to re-identify. But if you wake up every single morning and say, you know what? for better or for worse, for the flaws that I have and the perfections of who I am, the perfectly flawed version of me. I love who I am. It took me decades to say that. And so I challenge anyone right now that is not living in their favorite version of themselves, write down who that is, write down what they're doing, write down how they identify, and go do that. Stop making excuses.
Stop making, honestly, you just have the biggest smile on my face because it's 100%. I'm very passionate about identity and that we can't achieve more than what we believe we are. And, I was reading one of your posts and I loved it. It's the same. I've seen it different ways. Like two people are trying to quit smoking. One person, they get offered a cigarette. One says, no, thanks. I'm trying to quit smoking. The other says, no, I'm not a smoker. And it's so slight in vocabulary, but so powerful in what you said. And one of your comments was when it was, I'm the person that walks 10,000 steps versus, to get to my goal, I want to walk 10,000 steps. So share with me in there and help people understand like that reinvention of identity, how you talk to your own self is so important.
Oh, absolutely. Self-talk is so critical. And I'll mess up the statistics, but I mean, what is it? We have like 80,000 thoughts a day and like nearly 80% of them are negative or neutral. That sucks. So whatever you could do to change that dynamic, go for it. But to the point of what you said, I was sharing online or on a TV appearance that, when we're pursuing goals, instead of identifying to the task, identify to the or align yourself with the identity of who you want to be. So, for people that are trying to get in shape, instead of saying, oh, I got to go walk 10,000 steps, say, I am somebody who walks daily. So that way you don't, one, shy away from the goal. Number two, you don't take it so hard on yourself and you give yourself more grace when you don't hit 10,000 steps. And along the way, even with my weight loss goal, were there days that I went off the wagon? Absolutely there was. I had people that would come to me and say, oh, you ought to get into like natural bodybuilding or physique competitions. I'm like, absolutely not. I love wine, cheese, and bread too much. And there's no way I'm giving them up just to go stand on a stage for an hour or two. Like, I'm not going to do that. But
I forgot to mention, I think that's probably how we first connected, was talking about wine types and cheese.
Probably that checks out. But yeah, at the same time, like if you say, I am a successful person versus I will be successful when I have, or I am a positive person, or I'm only positive when you say I am, or I will be this person, that is a stronger, it's kind of like the joy happiness thing. It's a stronger foundation so that when you fall off the wagon or when you make a mistake or when you come up short on a daily goal or weekly goal, you're not beating yourself up about it.
No. I mean, I think that guilt is so prevalent too around us, is that like, well, then I screw up, then I can't. And it's about like, no, give yourself grace. Like, I love what you said before. We're not perfect. It doesn't mean, and actually I want to dive into this as parents too, because I personally believe, and you and I haven't talked about this, but I want to talk about it, is I see at least my kids having this almost like failure to launch. Because they do grow up in this social media world where they just see the accolades of someone being so perfect at it, but not enough of like the journey to get there. So it's almost, and I don't think my kids are an anomaly with this, that if I'm not perfect with it, I'm not going to do it. So I'll just shy away from it all. And I think like our kids, and ultimately who are a reflection of us, are missing some of this freaking grit and this like ability to take a chance on ourselves to lose, to win. Some of the things that you were talking about before, even at whatever age, we've got to be able to do that. And I think if people like, oh, I screwed up, then it's not for me. Well, that's also not a decision, because you can't just make a decision to do it when it's convenient or until you lose and then you don't win. But like, I think this is missing right now. And I don't know if it's directly correlated to social media, but I think it has a lot to do with it, because people get teased when they screw up.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think there's the element of social media that has a big impact on it. And I know your kids are a little bit older than mine, and I forbade my sons to be on social media for a while because of this fact. And I think what happens, I think a couple of different things happen here. One, if you think about social media, you got these personalities that have built themselves bigger than life. So let's just take influencer A, who has 200,000 followers, shows up every day looking fantastic, content's on point, blah, 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 blah. Nobody ever talks about the behind the scenes. How many times did they shoot that video? Who's supporting them and doing all the editing and all the text overlays and all the transitions, and are they doing that themselves, or is somebody else helping them? What are the situations? Like there's so many things that go into the creation of something that we don't talk about enough, so that people can understand there is trial and error. There is doing and trying. Not every single post that a Mr. Beast or whoever puts out is successful. And so also I think when you hit a certain level, those kids that have 10 followers are looking at people that have 100 or 200,000 followers and thinking, I'll never get there. Well, everybody starts somewhere. And so it's the identification that there is a middle ground of messy failure. And even at the highest level, we see people that are on top of their game all the time make mistakes. You pick any athlete in any sport who is at the top of their game. They have made mistakes. They have come in second place or worse at some point. So the idea that we're not talking enough about, that's why I love my podcast, because I talk about that messy middle. When I bring celebrities or people that are accomplished business people online on my show, I tell them, I'm like, all due respect to your Grammys or to your multi-billion-dollar company or to this and this and this, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the night that you sat there in your office and thought, am I doing the right thing? I think I want to give up. I want to talk about that night. I want to talk about the times where it sucked, but you kept going. I wanted to talk about the time where you realized you couldn't do it all by yourself, so you reached out for help. Because those are the things that we don't talk about and don't do enough. I also think going back to the whole editing process, not seeing the behind the scenes thing, is that, and this happened literally the other night. I'm at an event that I was speaking at, and then I wound up staying, for their holiday party afterwards. And they have, and this will, depending on your audience who's listening to this, there are things called disposable cameras that you take a picture, you have no idea what the picture looks like until you have it developed, and then you get the results. And nowadays, kids, like I've been in airports or been in New York and seen people taking selfies, and they'll take 10, 12 selfies until it's just right. And when it's just right, they'll slap a filter on it and they'll edit this and they'll do this. I'm like, there's something magical about that picture that gets developed after the fact that you see and like, oh God, you can't go back and recreate the moment, but it winds up being a core memory of it. And so it's that idea that we're too polished. What is that messy middle? What is that editable moment that you didn't edit? What is that selfie that you took that maybe one of your eyes was a little bit off to the side, or maybe you're half winking or half blinking? Like, what are those things that are imperfect that make us want to be a little bit better, or just accept the fact that, hey, it's not perfect and that's okay?
Yeah. I mean, similar to your podcast, this is what Xposed was about. It's like, what did you have to expose, learn about yourself, uncover to like really create what it's like? Because to your point, when you said about grace, like it is exhausting being on all the time. Nobody does it. And it's not real. Like, who wants the fakeness? Like, we're all about that. And yet I really believe, though, there's like, how many times have you heard this from people? Well, once I turned 40, I stopped giving a shit. Really? Really? You stopped giving a shit? That's
Right.
why you are not going after your goals, not taking a chance on yourself, not willing to stand up when everybody else sits down. Like, and I think we got to reevaluate maybe in certain areas. But like, I did this keynote this one time where women said that, and I said, okay, everybody stand up. I want you to do a little burlesque dancing. And we're like looking at her like, what the hell? Like, pretend you have a glove on, right? But it was around this thing of like, we all want to embody these things, but we've got to, or we all say, but we really got to start living them. We can't think our way through confidence. We can't think our way through that messy middle. There is only one way to get through it. And if we did this more for our own selves, I think when we're looking at our kids, they would, be able to normalize that behavior a little bit too,
Yeah. And I will say too, along the parenting route, one of the things that I don't recall ever hearing as a child was, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And so I am very diligent and very mindful of that with my boys, because I'm not perfect. And I'll tell them that all the time. Nor do I try to be, nor do I convey myself to be that person. But what I will say to them is this: if I make a mistake, I am quick to apologize. Quick. I own the mistake, I own the resolution, and I own the change behavior moving forward, because I didn't never hear that. And so when I make a mistake, when I, unfortunately will lose my temper or get frustrated with them, or something else is affecting me and I'm not leveraging my own emotional intelligence in that moment, I'll make that mistake and then I will feel wickedly guilty. And I will go to them and say, I am so sorry. That is my fault. I made that mistake. This is what I witnessed. This is what I experienced. This is what I'm sure you're feeling. I'd love to hear more, but I can guarantee you that this won't happen again.
It's so good, because I think though what that also is like taking accountability and responsibility. And you kind of alluded to it in the first, when we were talking initially around living in this kind of victim type of world. It's everybody else's fault but mine. It's, it's the food, it's the whatever, it's the news. And I believe when you're creating the reinventions that you've created and you speak to, that doesn't happen without radical responsibility and accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think so often we lie to ourselves about where we are. And that's really something that trips a lot of us up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and two, I think the other piece of it too, and I've fallen guilty to this as well, is that comparison factor.
Yeah.
And I think it's so prevalent now with social media, especially, that just because somebody's doing better doesn't mean you're doing poorly. Mm-hmm. And I'll be very honest and transparent. I was at a dinner with two friends of mine the other night who were talking about how successful of a year that they had. And they did phenomenal. They were sharing how much money they had made, and they did phenomenal, both of them. And the first thought that popped into my mind is like, oh God, I hope they don't ask me how much I made. Because I was feeling inferior based on the numbers that they were throwing out. Does that make my number bad? No. I've had the best year that I've had in my entire career. But by comparison, like, okay, I'm not doing as well as them. But then I also, as we continue the conversation, started dissecting, like, okay, how are they probably able to achieve that? Both of them are clinical psychologists, so they have an active practice. And also they do speaking, and also they're authors. And so there are those other factors that come into play that are affecting that. And it made me on the drive home think, okay, well, if I want to get to that number, what do I need to change? And I've already had some plans in process, but I'm like, okay, well, I can have a more fair comparison if need be, which I don't need to compare myself to anyone, but I can compare myself to myself today in a year or two by saying, here are the things I'm going to go do to increase that number. And, these are the routes and methods I'm going to go about to do it. All very achievable. But to your point of the victim mentality, instead of me saying, well, I'll never do that, I'll never make that much money. Okay, I've already convinced myself that I won't, so I won't. But if I change my mind and change my direction, I have every opportunity and every privilege to do so if I want to, and if I want to work hard enough, and if I want to do it the right way and ask for help and find my path, absolutely I can.
I love it. It's like the philosophy of, and I like to live by this. I'm not consistent either, but it's one I will reinforce every day, is like, if one person can do it, so can I, right? And I just think it goes to the desire. Do you want it? Right. And where is that intrinsic want coming from? Is it because you want to do it so that you can say that you're better? Or is it because it's like something you truly want? I know, like running my half Ironman this year, it really showed me the difference between goal setting and goal achievement, because, it was like, I knew I wanted it. It's what got me up. I was already, kind of to your point with the future self, I'd already crossed the line. So if I was already crossing the line, what would I have to do? And it was interesting to me, because there's been other goals I've set that I wasn't willing to get uncomfortable. I would go to the edge of the comfort zone and then retract a little bit. And so really it taught me that, like, if that desire is not there, and you got to get honest with it, it's like, this is a goal for you or for somebody else, or what you think you should be doing. If it's not for you in alignment, then your search of like, you will continue to compare yourself. And it is that comparison is the thief of joy, or you won't follow through in your actions. And by not following through in your actions, you'll lose confidence in yourself. And it's kind of this spiral.
Well, and two things that you said there that are very relevant as well, as I think about going back to the weight loss thing, is that number one, I never went through that process for anyone else but me. I didn't do it to lose weight, to look better for a person or for my reunion or for any other reason than just I wanted to feel comfortable and happy and satisfied. Because again, think about it. Like if you lose all that weight and you're losing it to impress someone, they may have a completely different taste than you. They may, who knows? They may like somebody who has a different nose or a different hair color or a different height or whatever. So you could lose weight and be fit all day long, but if they're still just not you're going to be disappointed because you're chasing that one thing. But if you are chasing a goal for your own happiness, your own joy, you're going to be more satisfied with the end result. And I've completely lost track on the other piece of it, but that pursuit of doing it for the right reason is everything. And it's doing it for you and nothing and nobody else.
And I love it. It's also that, you alluded to it earlier too, was that you're enjoying the whole journey. It's not like when I get there, then I'll be this, right? Like I am. And so I act this way. And then when you fall off, the train or whatever the cliche word is for that day, you're so much easier to get back up to it because you identify with it. So I have a question. When you look back into your old identity or something, like what is the one potentially piece that, you have to be intentional with, it kind of tries to creep in for you now and again?
Oh, I will say all day long, it's the self-doubt. And it is something that what I have found over time and classify this as woo-woo, philosophical, whatever you want to call it. I truly believe that there is a force of nature in the world that doesn't want you to be your best because it's scared of your best. And it is an evil negative force that just does not want you to achieve your highest potential. Period. I fully believe that. I do not care who disagrees with me. That's just what I've seen and experienced myself. Because I will say without fail, when I am extremely close to a big goal, there is something that creeps in that tries to knock me off of the path. And whether it's personal, professional, monetary, whatever, there is going to be something that is like, oh shit, I don't want him to get to this potential. What do we need to go to? So it's almost kind of like going into your weakness, inventory. What can we throw at him this time? Oh, let's throw a little self-doubt in there. Let's throw a no and then follow it up with the wrong mood shift. It's like that force of nature knows how to push your buttons in the wrong direction. But that's why emotional intelligence is so important, because when I have those moments, I'm not going to say that I don't fall victim to them still. And there are days where it becomes a little bit deeper than I would like. But for the most part, it is a dramatically different game for me when that happens. So previously, if that creeped in, I would be done for the day and maybe a day or two after that. Like I'm not getting back on the horse. And if I do get back on the horse at all, it's not going to be at the same energy or the same focus that I had before. So what happens now is that if that happens, I feel it. I understand the emotion. My awareness is strong. So I'll feel the emotion and I start putting on the brakes before I start sliding down the rabbit hole. And that's my self-management. I'm like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What am I doing? What's in my control and what's not in my control? How can I do something? What can I learn from this mistake, or what can I learn from this time to be better moving forward? And I right the ship a lot quicker. And is it perfect right out of the gate? No. But it turns it back to a way that I can function, that I can optimize my performance, and then I can feel like I'm back on track again quicker and stronger. That's that resilience piece. It's that grit piece that you talked about earlier. How am I getting back up? And what am I doing? How am I bouncing back stronger?
So good. It's like shorten that refractory period. And I agree 100%. I mean, our mind, I think it's so important to realize is like our mind doesn't want us to change. That's its job, is to keep us safe. And so you get to these points. And I think that's where I'm so glad you shared the point of like, just right before I get to this big goal, because the goal was already like, holy shit, I don't know if I can do it. Then you get so close, then that doubt just creeps in. A lot of people say it's the fear that we should shy from. it's like fear's a manifestation of the doubt. If we don't catch it at the doubt stage, we're in big trouble. But it's just like, no, identity shift. And I'm sure you find right in that moment that when you catch it and you get back on the horse, that is like change. And then it's like, it's that little final last test from the universe. You say, are you really sure? Are you ready? Because we can't, I believe we can't receive something we're not the person we need to be. And so it's like that one little test to like stretch us into our own becoming.
Well, and you talked about the half Ironman. So I have a keynote built around when I ran the New York City Marathon. And one of the things that sometimes I share and sometimes I don't, it just depends on if it works. But I trained for 10 months for that race. And I think it was maybe like 2 weeks before the race, I was out for a run. I was kind of coming to the close of my training regiment, and I was out for a run and I tweaked my ankle just a little bit. And so I got back to my house. I'm sitting in the driveway. I remember this clear as day. And I'm sitting in my driveway and I'm kind of stretching and nursing my ankle a little bit. And all of a sudden, this doubt shows up at my door and says, you know what? Who's going to fault you if you don't go? Who's going to say, oh, you could have fought through that ankle injury. And how bad do they think it is? Nobody knows that you hurt your ankle. You could make it sound like a really big deal and not go run the race at all. And who's going to be like, oh, you're such a lazy ass. Like, they're not going to do that. They're going to say, you know what? Proud of your effort. Proud that you came this far. Proud that you tried. Right. And I sat there in that. I was like, there's a way out. I think I could do this. And this voice came screaming from within and said, if you do that, you will give up on everything that you've done to this point to get to this, to get this far. You will let yourself down because you know that you are better than that. And I took a couple of days off, and rested my ankle, rested my body, finished my training regiment and ran the New York City Marathon. But I was that close to throwing in the towel, that close from saying, yeah, I don't know that this is for me.
So good. You're right. And I think that's like, and we talk about these bigger things like the marathon or the Ironman, but it is like, I don't think we realize, actually, this is one more question because I want you to talk about how important this is like celebrating those ones. Like it's the same as pressing snooze, right? Like promising yourself the night before that you're going to do something and then not following through. And I don't think that we realize the impact that has on us, because I always say, like, you couldn't even wake up on time. Do you think when you really have this big worthy goal that your like subconscious mind is like, oh yeah, it's like, damn, you couldn't even wake up on time. Like, you think you're going to go do this?
Well, it's the concept of micro goals, right? And I said at the same television appearance, I said, you've got to have micro goals and you've got a structure to get to that point. I couldn't have just freewheeled that weight loss. I couldn't have freewheeled all these different goals. And to your point, like I knew, because I've had a busy year, I knew that there were a lot of things, little details that I have put off, updating some keynote information, updating my website. There was a video project that I had worked on, all of these little things. And I kept pushing them off and pushing them off and pushing them off. And then I knew where like my schedule was going to kind of be done for the year. I had this gap between, last week and the end of the year that I knew that I had just heads down office time. So I made a list of all the little things that I needed to get done. And I spent the last 2 days knocking off tons of them, glancing over at it right now, knocking off tons of them. Even this morning where I just went through and updated the content on my website as far as my keynote descriptions go. And I updated the cover page of each of the presentations. I'm going to put up a LinkedIn post here in a little bit announcing these new versions of these keynotes and the brand new one that I'm going to be launching in 2026 as well. That to me feels so good. Yes, the overall goal of building my business is the big goal. Part of that is updating the content, working on the website, doing the video stuff. It's the stuff that gets you to that point where you're hitting those bigger goals by knocking off the smaller goals along the way. And that, to your point, like you mentioned it earlier too, falling in love with the journey. Did I want to, like in my optimal mind, did I want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, have a cup of coffee and sit here and stare at my website? Absolutely not. But did I know that it was going to get me to where I wanted to go? Absolutely it did. And so I fell in love with the work of that. I can't tell you how nerded out I was when I hit save on my website that updated all my keynote content. I was so proud of myself. That sounds so dumb. And to your point, like, it doesn't have to be crossing the finish line in Central Park and running the New York City Marathon. It could be not hitting the snooze button for a week. It could be updating that one page on your website. Whatever it is, celebrate those micro goals. They're just as important as the big goals.
So good. It's like building the snowball. It just keeps building the momentum. And I think that's so key. Honestly, we could talk forever. And I got a couple more, but before I end with it, I want to tell you, I do these ageless questions and I'm switching them up because I didn't get enough exposed and really one word at once. And so I might keep some the same and some a little bit different because we never got into your music, but I want to know, who's your favorite person that you ever opened for with DJing, or the best memory?
Avicii, hands down. The late great Avicii, I got to open for him once, and it was just, the whole evening was just magical. It was the best experience. I still have photos and videos that I share on a frequent basis from that night. It was the coolest experience ever.
So when you dance, do you dance or do you just jump when you're DJing? I'm just curious.
Oh, I dance. I lip sync, I sing, I have fun. I'm very much I'm an entertainer at heart. And so I am very active. And so I'm doing all the above. Am I a good dancer? No. I will, but I have fun. I have fun, and I will, mug for the crowd and have a good time and interact with the crowd. Like, that's where it's fun for me. Am I cheesy, and do I do a lot of dad dances in the DJ booth? Absolutely, I do.
That's my favorite.
But I make it fun.
I like to think that it gives people permission to let go. I'm like, hey, if I can look like this, then you don't have anything else to worry about.
Exactly. Hopefully everybody in the club looks at me and says, I'm not that bad of a dancer, so I actually feel better about my own moves. Like,
okay, 80s or 90s, which decade shaped you more and why?
80s. The 80s shaped me more because I have so many core memories tied to the music. I do with the 90s as well, and that's when I really got into DJing. So that's such a big part of my life. But the foundation of music and the passion for music was set in the 80s. I will also say, and I'll have this argument all day long with people, you are hard-pressed to find a decade of music that has such longevity and appeal and impact as the 80s does. The 90s were fun. There was some really good stuff that came out of there. There were some great bands like Rage Against the Machine or Arrested Development or Public Enemy that were big in the 80s and then into the 90s that, had profound impact. But when you think about the classicness, there are songs now that are making comebacks that are 80s songs that, people that, like, my son was singing Young MC the other day, and he was rapping in the kitchen, and I picked up the second verse word for word. He was like, how do you know this song? I'm like, dude, I did this song for my 7th grade talent show. Don't tell me that this is your song. The 80s by far are my favorite decade of all time.
Do you still remember your home phone number?
Yes, I do. My parents still live there, so I'm not going to give it out so people aren't prank calling my parents. Yes, I do. I remember both of my childhood phone numbers.
That's hilarious. I remember mine started with 4 digits, and then it went to 5, and then we had to add the 7. So it's hilarious. One thing kids today will never experience that made Gen X tougher.
So many things. So many things that I think were typical for us, and as a parent now, I probably will say, don't do that. Like, what are you doing? Drinking from a garden hose. The latchkey kid philosophy. Somebody posted the other day the image of a cassette tape with the ribbon caught in the player and the tape was on the outside of the player. Like that was the thing. If that cassette broke, game over. Like, you just don't have that tape anymore. You have to go buy a new one. So it's not like, oh, I deleted that file, I can just go restream it or go listen to it on Spotify. Like, no, if your Duran Duran tape got warped by any means, or that tape broke, you were SOL. You had to go get a new 7 and the Ragged Tiger tape at Musicland or wherever. Like, you had to go do that. You just couldn't pick up where you left off.
Oh, so good. Okay, we talked a lot about identities that we outgrew or habits that you outgrew. Is there one habit that you'll never outgrow?
So many. I will say that the habit that I will never outgrow is my desire to, for better or for worse, sing a song when it comes on. Like I have in my heart of hearts, I'm an entertainer. And if that's me entertaining myself in my car, if that's me entertaining my sons and making them laugh, if that's me entertaining people at a keynote or a DJ set or online or whatever, I will never give that up. I just don't know how to. And so the other day I was thinking about a time that I was told that I was too much. And I'm like, you know what? You're also the same person that if you were in my club and you just stared at me, I wouldn't care. Like, I don't need to please everyone. I'm never going to be everybody's cup of tea. And it took me a long time to realize that. But when I did, it was so liberating. But I will always entertain. And I apologize too to the woman. There was a woman, we talked about music taste earlier, and I'm very much a heavy metal fan. And I was singing heavy metal in my car the other day, and I terrified a woman at the stoplight because I was not paying attention. And I guarantee you, I don't know how I looked, but it couldn't have been pretty and it couldn't have been calming.
I love it. You hinted a big year is coming in 2026. Share what's most exciting and how people, if they're not in your world, can get more rich in their world.
Yeah. So so you can find everything about me on richbracken.com. All the announcements that I have coming up for stuff is all on my website. Gosh, there's so many. I will say that the appearance in Men's Health magazine being a 27-year goal come true this January, that is going to be a highlight. But I'm really excited about pursuing my first book and writing that, because it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time and have just never really known what I wanted to write it on. So when I came to the realization of what I wanted to do and write about that I knew would help people, but I would also enjoy writing about it, I became obsessed with it. So that's going to happen. I think that's probably the one thing I'm most excited about.
It is so good. Well, I am grateful that you came on with me today, closing out our year for Xposed Living. And this was a prime example of those times, because I remember I got feedback from a person one time that said, "Hey, Stace, your guys' pictures are different or your volumes aren't the same." And, it was one of those things. I said, you know what, if I waited for those types of things, it would have never happened. So thank you for being on this journey, for sharing it with me. And what I appreciate most about you is that you don't just talk about the momentum, you live it. You've demonstrated, whether that's in your career, with your health journey, your leadership, your parenting, the way you show up. For yourself, but always for others. So thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that.
And
thank you for having me on the show.
Everyone listening, this is your reminder that it's never too late to reset, to reclaim your energy, to become the person your goals require, to be the person that you want to be. I mean, I think Rich said it. I'll say, yes, it can be hard, but I tell you what I personally believe is harder is living with this regret or this guilt or this thing of, Wayne Dyer said it, with the music in you, don't let it die within you, let it sing. And so as we head into 2026, remember that. This is Xposed Living, be ageless, and keep becoming. Thank you. Ta-da!
That's it for today's episode of Xposed Living, be ageless. But this is just the beginning. If this episode made you feel something, share it. Tag me. Send it to a friend. Let's start the conversation we can be having all along. No shame, no guilt. Unfiltered, raw, real, exposed. And if you're ready to go deeper, join us inside the Xposed Living Facebook community, where we take this work off the podcast and into real life. Know this, your change starts when your excuses die. Because this life, this one wild, ageless, unforgettable life is waiting on you. This is your time. This is your truth. This is Xposed Living.